And hey, this is Christian Buckley with another MVP Buzz Chat interview, and I'm here with Sandy this morning. Good morning.
Hi, Christian. How are you?
I'm doing well. And so why don't you introduce yourself for folks that don't know you? We've known each other for years. I see you at events around the world. And why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I'm Sandy Ussia. I'm Sandy U on Twitter, and I am a Power Apps and Power Automate MVP of about a year ago. I'm also a technical evangelist for Lightning Tools, which is a SharePoint ISV based in the UK. And I am co-host of the Flow Pro Show, which is
That's a fun name, Flow Pro Show.
Which is a monthly webcast around Power Automate. And also I'm a digital nomad, my husband and I are.
Yeah, that's an interesting piece, like, because you guys made that decision. How long have you been doing that? A couple of years back, right?
Over 4 years.
4 years ago. So where have you been? Where have you nomaded?
Up until, so 2019, we've been all in the States because we were spending time. I was helping my mom get ready to move from Pittsburgh to Naples, Florida, which was where I am right now. And, but prior to that, we had spent about half the year in Europe and half the year in the States. So Germany, Italy, UK, mainly a little bit of Croatia and Sweden. And then Northern California a good bit because that's where our daughter lives, DC fairly often, that's where our son lives, and just generally around the country, around the world.
So I have to ask this, it's like, how do you, I mean, what is that life like? I mean, most people that will claim nomad status will be like in a single wide, or an RV traveling the country type thing. But, so what are you guys actually doing?
Well, we usually just buy a one-way ticket someplace we want to go. Might be based on my speaking schedule or work schedule or just someplace we want to go. And then we stay there for a while and then we decide where to go next, pretty much. But we each just carry a carry-on bag and a laptop bag, and everything else is gone. We sold our house and our cars and and gave away most of our belongings. We just have a small storage unit where our house used to be.
Wow, that's a big change. So I mean, so obviously we've talked about you. I see you at tech events. I've seen seen your face at other online events where I'm participating remotely. I've tried to convince my wife to now that we're empty nesters to go and do something like that. Of course, my wife is working full time and also in school full time. And with the grandchild now arrived, she has less of an interest to leave the country for a year. But so from a tech perspective, I mean, you're to go and live around, are working on projects, or are you just finding some place that's really interesting where you want to live and then just kind of doing your work wherever you are?
Right, that's basically it. I was already working remotely for Lightning Tools when we lived in Pittsburgh, which is our hometown. And so it doesn't make that much difference really where I am. It's just good internet is a major criterion for where we choose to stay. Mostly Airbnbs, but we've also done some house sitting as well. So that's free place to stay while you just watch somebody's cat or something.
It's interesting. I've worked for several companies that have been in the business of creating collaboration technology, and almost all of them, I think all of them were against remote work. It just
makes
seems
no sense.
Right. It makes no sense. You're right. I mean, my requirement is that I need to live within an hour of a major airport. I don't want to have to, everywhere I go, hop once from a minor metro. That's just my requirement. And then good internet. That's it. I could live just about anywhere in the world that has those two things.
Yeah, sometimes it involves some adjustment to time zones. Like in the work that I do, I need to meet with people in Europe and the US. So for example, the time on the West Coast is a little more difficult to have meetings with people in the UK and Europe, but it's doable. So yeah.
Yeah, that's if anybody's not had that experience where I was living in Seattle, managing developers in India,
Mm,
working with an architect out of Sydney, and then had
mm,
a bunch of clients that were in Europe.
hmm.
And those were difficult phone calls for somebody. It was always
Right.
uncomfortable. Mine ended up being that I had engineering meetings Sunday through Thursday nights starting at 10 p.m.
Mm. Well, I always figure I make myself be the more flexible one because it's my choice to live this way, really. And so I don't want to put other people out as much as possible just because because I choose to move around. So,
Well, what are the topics that you're presenting on? So you do a lot of SharePoint. You come from the SharePoint world as
right,
well. So SharePoint Saturdays are
right.
just part of our DNA, I guess, for
Yeah,
many of us. So
right.
what are kind of the topics that you're talking about lately?
So I've kind of moved away from speaking on SharePoint. I do sometimes still submit SharePoint topics to SharePoint Saturdays and Office 365 Saturdays. Well, I often do. But mostly what gets chosen is Power Apps and Power Automate. And that's what my MVP turned out to be. And even though I've been speaking on SharePoint for 10 plus years now, but
Well, that's also kind of for people that don't understand that say, oh, well, I've never really been to a SharePoint Saturday because I'm not a SharePoint person.
mm,
You need to go look at the topics
mm-hmm,
because,
mm-hmm. They've
SharePoint,
really morphed.
right? They have, and you've seen kind of a rebranding. We're doing a rebranding here in Utah,
Mm-hmm,
where we're calling it Microsoft 365 Friday.
mm-hmm.
There's a couple different reasons we're moving ours to Friday. We also have Saturday with workshops, so we're doing slightly different things.
Yeah,
But
Nashville did something like that too.
right. But the model is essentially the same, that it's free to attend that main event. It's a variety of topics. We have a SharePoint track,
Mhm.
and there's still a lot of SharePoint for people that want to talk, intranets and portals and document collaboration and all the automation that comes with that, intranets and extranets. But to your point, you have now the Power Apps, Power Automate, a lot of Power BI. The Power Platform is a popular topic
Yeah, yeah,
with
yeah.
users.
I help organize the SharePoint Saturday Pittsburgh. Also, I initiated that, and then I came back and helped organize it this year as well. And we had, yeah, basically a Power Platform track, and but then also, yeah, Teams and the rest of Office 365. But I would say at the events that are specifically branded SharePoint Saturday or SPS events, um, at least when I speak at those, I try to sort of lean toward the SharePoint space in my talking about Power Apps and Power Automate, like how it works with SharePoint. And I think most other people do kind of similar, but there is so much more available now that you can connect to so much more and really anything in the Microsoft stack.
Well, that's one of
Almost.
the benefits of the events too, is that, and I wish that everyone who attended a SharePoint Saturday would do this, but go and talk to the speakers.
Mhm.
If you, even if they go down a niche topic or niche area, um, have them ask questions to try and relate it to your business. Be
Mhm.
very specific, and I'd also say that my experience is that SharePoint Saturday speakers, by a rule, are community-centric people,
Oh,
and
definitely.
so they are open to reach out, connect with me, let's talk, ask your specific questions. Obviously, there's always that fine line. Well, what you keep asking detailed questions. What we're really doing now is you're engaging me in, or trying to engage me in, a free consulting
Right,
effort.
right, right.
You've got to
Yeah,
be
there's a
sensitive to that. But
uh-huh. Right. But yeah, I agree that, yeah, by definition, if somebody is going to an event to speak for free, then they enjoy just helping others for the sake of helping others, or bringing them along, helping them to learn more about the platform and what's going on. So yeah, that's something that I am definitely quite interested in general, is
well,
just yeah.
Well, it sounds like, I mean, with your background in SharePoint, now with the Power Apps and Automate, that I mean, you're all about getting that deeper level. It's the assumption is, okay, you're running SharePoint, you're running these things within your organization. How do you get more out of what you've already invested in?
Mm-hmm,
Is
mm-hmm.
that kind of your approach?
And I really like, I would say, where kind of my wheelhouse as far as the things that I like to speak about and what I think I'm best at is helping people kind of get started with those things. Like if they're not familiar with Power Apps or Power Automate, how to help them kind of get over that first hurdle of learning the basics about it and not being afraid of that it looks complicated or something, or I need to know some kind of code or something, because there's a lot of things that you can do that really are pretty easy to do. And even if they look hard, uh, they might not be. So that's what I especially like doing, is showing people how to really take advantage of what they've got.
Well, Sandy, you've written enough content, you've spoken in enough, conferences to know that people love lists. They
Yeah.
love very prescriptive lists, like tell me what to go and do. So,
Mm.
Sandy, what are the 5 things? The
Okay.
5 things that people need to do to kind of get started. Where do people actually get started? What do you recommend?
Um, the community, so each of Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI have a community, a tech. So not on the tech community site, but on the now I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but like Power Platform community or whatever. There are forums there, and I always tell people to go there to ask their questions, because there are Microsoft people, but also community people who are constantly reading those questions, and you usually get an answer within a day or so. I mean, if you need like an urgent answer, you should be doing something else, um, but there's lots of content already there, thousands of questions answered, and so I always tell people to go there. Um, I like watching videos and learning from them, and so there's a lot of really good video content, like John Levesque's video YouTube channel on Power Automate.
To
Audrey
point out
Gordon.
that John is the Microsoft person.
Right,
He's
right.
do you like the kind of the evangelist for
Evangelist,
the Power
yes.
Platform? Okay,
Yeah,
yeah,
or for Power Automate at this
Power
point,
Automate,
yes.
right.
And Audrey Gordon, same. So she had a lot of getting started kinds of videos when she was on the Power Apps team. Now she's on Power Automate team, and same. So she's got a lot of great videos on that as well. So I always recommend those two YouTube channels. Plus, there's a lot of community things. I've got a whole slide that I show in my Jumpstart talks. I've got a Power Automate Jumpstart and a Power Apps Jumpstart talk that I give a lot of places, and also for private assistance. And I've got actually 2 whole slides of links to different resources, community resources and Microsoft resources on both of those. So that's a great place to get started.
And you post all your stuff out to SlideShare still?
I
Do you
don't
have it
know
off
about
your own
all of it,
site?
but
Or?
I do have those, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just like it because it is, besides the fact that LinkedIn bought them, so now Microsoft owns them, but SlideShare for a long time, if those that might not be familiar with slideshare.net, it actually does great on SEO. It performs really well. It comes up very quickly. So it can be a great place to upload presentations and
Right. Yeah, I need to
that
get
kind of
more
stuff.
out there.
But,
Yeah.
all right. So that's, correct me if I'm wrong, 3.
Oh, okay.
So the forums of the community, go to the videos, and John and Audrey kind of in those, and then 3, like your resources, your Jumpstart
Yes.
stuff offsite. Okay, that's
Okay.
3.
All right. Well, I guess 4 would be just jump in and try and do something. Both of those platforms have templates available from Microsoft, so I it's up for debate whether those are necessarily good to just use as they are, because they're not necessarily completely kept up to date or vetted sometime. Well, they are vetted, but not necessarily updated, but they're really good for learning. So learning patterns of how to do things in Power Automate and Power Apps both. So that's a suggestion, is to look at the templates that are on there. That's 4.
Yep.
5.
That's a fantastic way to go and learn and tweak it. Look at all the attributes,
Right.
go in and modify, change
Right.
things for your own,
Right.
and test it out.
Yep. And 5 is just do. Just go in and think of some use case that you have, something that would really benefit you if it were automated or if it were mobile, and then try and do it, work through it, and ask questions of the community. There's Power Addicts hashtag you can use for, well, that it's kind of been Power Apps, but they're trying to put that across the whole platform, sort of like SP Help is or used to be for SharePoint. So if you tweet and tag Power Addicts, you'll likely get answers to your questions. So that's another one as well. 6.
Yeah, I'll add that one to the list too.
All right.
But that number 5 though, the idea of just do, is that pilot idea. And I think what's important about this, and when I provide guidance to companies and other topics, but around piloting, is not to go take some out of the way scenario,
right,
do something that is business critical, that
right.
you know that you're familiar with.
Meaningful.
It's right. It needs to be meaningful. Otherwise you get to the end, you build it. I mean, how do you actually measure whether it worked, whether it had impact, if it's not meaningful? So that's essential.
Yeah, I don't know if I would say business critical right away.
Well, but something that is actually, it's like right. I agree with that. You don't want to, after years of doing the dog fooding, the software, and I stopped, when I was a Microsoft employee, I stopped doing the dog fooding and being on the first release because I had to work. I had external clients, and so where I was unable to join meetings, so it would break things sometimes. And so I stopped doing this. So you want to have, real scenarios. Right. You don't want to go find your biggest client, the biggest business case that's out there, and go and mess with that.
Right. But same with SharePoint. I would say, like, when I implemented SharePoint in my manufacturing business that I owned at that time, that's how I got into SharePoint. Was I had put it in our small business, and I just chose some things that we were spending a lot of time on, and like maintaining Excel spreadsheets and things like that, and put that over into SharePoint so that we could, even though we were a very small office and you wouldn't think we'd have to collaborate on things, but just having that all in SharePoint so that it's one truth and everybody can access it and so on, then that made the whole platform get adopted more easily. So that low-hanging fruit that is also important to the business and that people would actually use.
Yeah, that is essential, because then you're actually going to have accurate feedback coming back of how it changed. Everybody's familiar with what it looked like before, and now you can go and you can actually look at the results and talk about the changes to that process and whether it improved and what else needs to change. What's funny too is going through that activity is that you may then think of, hey, we need to go back and refine it. We built it, it improved things, but if I were starting from now, I'd actually go and change a bunch of things. And you might actually, it's a funny thing that happens, and I know that you know this from the SharePoint experience too, is that when you go and shed light on a new area and improve something, and then you realize, yeah, we improved that, yet we've been doing it wrong all this time, and we need to completely change that.
Right, yeah. Really, you don't want to just want to automate a bad process, for example.
Right. I used to love that about
make it go faster.
Well, it was like a permissions thing where like, well, search is not working. No, it's actually search is now working. It's now what we've identified is that you had bad permissions management, or classification of content. So, well, Sandy, I really appreciate your time today. People want to get in touch with you, want to learn more about you. What's the best way to reach you, to get in touch with you?
Probably Twitter, really. Sandy U. Because I'm really active on there. But you can also email me at sandy@sandyu.com.
And you've got a blog, of course. And you've got
although it has kind of languished a bit because I've been writing content for Lightning Tools now.
Yeah, I have the same problem. So most of my content these days is for clients, and a lot of it doesn't have my name on it. And so it's to find time to go and do stuff for your own blog is always it is an above and beyond thing, so. Well, Sandy, really appreciate your time. It was great talking to you.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.